9:20 पे टाइम है ना, 9:20 पे टाइम है, वो करके आएंगे, घर से आएंगे। ठीक है, जो भी है आप जरा रिमाइंड कर दीजिए मोबाइल पे। वी आर ऑल वेटिंग फॉर हिम। More DGS come.
I'm not able to see from here.
Namaskar, Dr. Sahab. If you could kindly attend to it, because everyone is waiting for you. He's just joining. Dr. Lama, can you keep yourself unmuted? Can you keep yourself unmuted, please?
Yes, sir.
Kindly check who are the people still not arrived. That the guests. Nabad,
From Nabat, I cannot see anyone.
Dr. Leacock has come.
Yeah.
He has come. What is the Nabad CMD has not come. CGM has not come.
Morning.
We'll start moment the DG comes.
Good morning. I am here.
Okay, let us start, Dr. Lama.
Okay, sir.
Start the
Good
program.
morning to all. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to our distinguished guests on the panel, guests and learned delegates from across the globe who have assembled here on this virtual platform for the inaugural program of the International Conference on Coastal Agriculture. Now, I request our respected director, Dr. P.C. Sharma, from Central Soil Salinity Research Institute, to kindly deliver his welcome address. P.C. Sharma.
Thank you, Dr. Lama. Good morning, Honorable Director General, Indian Council of Agricultural Research and Secretary, Department of Agricultural Research and Education, Government of India, New Delhi, Dr. Trilochan Mahapatra, the Chief Guest of this function, Guest of Honor, Dr. Liu Kiok, Councillor Agriculture, Australian High Commission, New Delhi, Dr. Sheikh Mohammad Bakhtar, Executive Chairman, Bangladesh Agricultural Research Council, Dhaka, Dr. S.K. Chowdhury, Deputy Director General, Natural Resource Management at ICR New Delhi, Dr. A.R. Khan, Chief General Manager, National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, Kolkata, directors from different ICR institutes and other organizations, Dr. H.S. Sain, President, Indian Society of Coastal Agricultural Research, distinguished panelists, invited speakers, participants, and personnel from press and media. On behalf of Indian Society of Coastal Agricultural Research and on behalf of ICR Central Soil Salinity Research Institute, Karnal, I extend my hearty welcome to all the dignitaries and participants from across the world in this 4-day long international symposium on coastal agriculture, transforming coastal zone for sustainable food and income security, being organized as international webinar by Indian Society of Coastal Agricultural Research in collaboration with ICR Central Soil Salinity Research Institute, Karnal. Coastal agriculture is vulnerable to vagaries of climatic changes and associated impacts. The effects have been severe in recent past in terms of extreme events like erratic rainfall, increased temperature, heavy downpour, storm surges, floods, increased surface temperature, and soil degradation. All these have led to a series of socioeconomic impacts in coastal zones that include reduced agricultural productivity, loss of coastal habitats, and decline in industrial activities. The irony is that the areas under coastal saline soils have been increasing at a very alarming rate. As per our estimate, the total area under saline soils in India is going to be increased by threefold by the end of 2050. And this has a great contribution from increase in coastal salinity. Compared to 1996 estimate of 6.73 million hectares of salt affected areas in the country, we have recorded an increase of around 15% salt affected area in the country till now. The problem of salinity in coastal regions is aggravating not only just by increase in area, but also by increase in the amount of salinity in dry months, which is increasing every year. Availability of fresh groundwater in dry months has been impacted in coastal regions, including those up to 100 kilometers from the coast. This has again put a question mark on practicing agriculture during this period. Therefore, groundwater recharge for enhanced availability of round the year availability of water for both drinking and crop cultivation is of utmost importance. Besides, the non-climatic stressors like urban growth, migration, land use changes, pollution, gender issues, etc., are often found as the drivers of changes in coastal agriculture, which have an impact on sustainability of food security in coastal region. A range of ecosystem services critical to ecological and economic security of the region needs attention for its sustainable users. Suitable policies need to be evolved to protect the vested interests of different stakeholders of coastal region with particular focus on multiple users of available water. The anthropogenic activities in the name of development and infrastructure creation has destroyed the biodiversity availability in the coastal region. Coastal regions are hotspots of biodiversity, and any change in the environment and ecosystem of these regions have massive impacts on mangroves, coral reefs, seagrasses, and various other aquatic and animal species. From more than 300 presentations, there will be 11 plenum lectures and 86 invited lectures by eminent scientists across the globe. Dignitaries from a total of 16 countries covering 5 continents are participating in this webinar, highlighting the importance of the topic and relevance of the concerned focal areas. I once again welcome you all in this very important international webinar and expect a deliberate and critical analysis of the problems and inclusive solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your welcome address. Now, I would like to call upon Dr. H.S. Sen, Honorable President of ISCAR, for giving his opening remarks. Dr. H.S. Sen, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Lama. While I think I welcome on my behalf and on behalf of the society all the distinguished delegates, including Dr. Trilochan Mahapatro, our chief guest, and the DG of ICR, Dr. Bokhtiyar from Bangladesh, Executive Chairman of BARC, and then DDG NRM, Dr. S.K. Chaudhary of ICR, and then Dr. A.R. Khan, Dr. Liu Kort from Australian High Commission, and the honored guests. So these are all very important occasions to be here. But while giving my opening remarks, I have become a little nostalgic in the sense that this society was born in 1973, and the institute itself was born in 1971. Society was born under the able and vibrant leadership of Dr. JSP Yadav, the then director of CSSRI Karnal, and ably assisted by so many of us at Canning Town, like Dr. A.K. Bandyopadhyay was the officer in charge. He took the lead and he was orchestrated very intensively and with all vigor and spirit by several personalities who are known nationally and internationally in due course of time. That includes Dr. Mangla Rai, that includes Dr. K.B.G.K. Rao, that includes Dr. Triveni Shankar Sinha, that includes Dr. K.S. Gill, that includes Dr. Raj K. Gupta also. So they were all there at the inception, and then we had uh, people like Dr. B.K. Bandyopadhyay, Dr. C.R. Vishwas, uh, who were there in Canning, but other people joined Canning at that point of time. And you can never imagine the kind of amenities we had. We didn't have the proper chair and table, no question of computer at that moment, and the internet came much later. So these are all the things that, and we had the service. So I'll be failing in my duties if I don't pay my respect to two of my colleagues. One is Dr. Ashit Ranjan Ball. He was a plant physiologist. And then Mr. S.K. Dutt. S.K. Dutt was the lifeline of the society. Had he not been there, taking an active role, doing everything for the society, everything for the draft, right from drafting and to press proof correction to publication. And he was the office himself for the Coastal Society, apart from his own research work. He was, I don't know whether he is here today or not, but this was an immense, I pay my respect to him. So these are all, the younger generation may not know them very closely, but coming to coastal ecosystem, I can tell you that coastal ecosystem, I'm not, I'm deviating from the bookish definition of the coastal ecosystem, but it's a transition of the zone representing uh, land surface and the sea, and represent the continental shelf. It's an extension of the continental shelf itself. And total area has worldwide has been uh, narrated by so many people, and then it will be explained by so many people. Besides, it has a it has its aesthetic value also, and some people even went to the extent of the combined global value of goods and services from the coastal ecosystem is about US dollar 12 to 14 trillion annually, a figure larger than the United States gross domestic product. This was worked out about 10 years back, of course, but still, I think the coastal ecosystem is a major concern, and it has a series of constraints in the form of anthropogenic factors, topography, related soil properties, protection measures undertaken, and natural disasters caused by the sea and through its interaction with climate and undersea tectonic movement of the earth. A factor in not only to influence the agricultural production and also the nature and extent of vulnerability of the ecosystem per se in a country. And there are a series of technical, administrative, and social constraints. I'm not going into any details of that. It will be covered by so many experts to be assembled in due course of time. But last and not the least, I personally believe the value addition in agriculture and allied areas offer possibly the greatest business opportunity in India and many other developing countries, not only by providing economic incentives to farmers with higher farm gate outputs, but also by creating scores of small and medium scale entrepreneurship opportunities to skilled and unskilled farmers in rural sectors, a greatest opportunity to solve unemployment problem, and the coastal ecosystems being no exception to that. Both both farm and non-farm sectors in the coastal ecosystem offer tremendous scope to improve livelihood standards through ecotourism, with mangrove destinations in particular in the coastal ecosystem. In the opening remarks, in the welcome address, Dr. Sharma has covered how many delegates we are covering. We are covering more 16 countries, and then it is a very large mammoth gathering. And we have got plenum lectures, we have got invited, we have got contributory papers, and we have got poster presentation. At the end, we have panel discussion and followed by the plenary session. I wish to thank all the dignitaries and other delegates assembled here for the kind participation and wish them all success. And goodbye for the time being. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sen, for your opening remarks. Now we have with us Dr. A.R. Khan, the Chief General Manager of NABARD Kolkata, as a special guest. I now request him to address this gathering. Sir, please.
Thank you. Good morning to everybody. Respected Dr. P.C. Sharma ji, Dr. H.S. Sen, President ICCR, Mr. S.K. Chaudhary, Dr. Sheikh Mohammad Bakhtar, and all those who are dignitaries connected to today's program. A warm welcome to all of you and good morning to everybody. Let me at the outset say that or express my sincere thanks to the organizers for having this webinar on a very important and appropriate topic and very timely, and also for making me a part of this event. Over the years, we have seen that the coastal ecosystem, there has been a paradigm shift. In the context of India itself, there has been changes from the production-oriented system to a policy focus more on market-led development of agri-ecosystem. We know that the agriculture sector is the largest employer of the communities and creates a huge employment potential and also ensures the national food security in the context of India. While several initiatives have been taken to revitalize agriculture, particularly coastal agriculture, the sector continues to witness constraints like shrinking land sizes, rising cost of cultivation, poor access to various agri-ecosystem services, and now the rising risk arising out of the climate change. We know that the surface signatures of the adverse impact of the climate change, they are very visible in terms of extreme weather events, rising sea level, and the unseasonal rainfall, rising temperatures, and of course, the water level rise and scarcity of water in space and time. In this context, the coastal ecosystem is the most vulnerable and the worst sufferer, as we know that the coastal economy is mostly dependent on fish farming, paddy cultivation, and connected activities like dairy and poultry. However, the frequent floods, the coastal area submergence in many parts of the country or even the world, the salt water ingress into the coastal aquifers, and the damage caused due to the severe weather events of the essential services like health, connectivity, drinking water, these pose severe threat to the coastal agriculture and sustainability of the coastal agriculture. In NABARD at India, we are taking measures, for example, building the climate resilience of the coastal communities, promoting large-scale climate-smart agriculture and the organic farming in the coastal areas, and also diversifying the activities in terms of dairy and poultry and other and the crops which are drought tolerant and salinity resistant. And the focus as of now in the Indian context from the government side, as also from the institutions like ours, NABARD, the focus is on building the adaptive capacities of the vulnerable communities against the adverse impact of the climate change. In fact, we have been supporting these kind of initiatives through our different funding mechanism, that how to build the capacities and resilience of these communities so that the loss to the property and the economy is minimal in the event of the crisis. We also focus more on the promotion of organic farming, because in the most of the coastal areas, due to the frequent floods and all, the productivity of the soil goes down. So to revive those soil health, we promote large scale, organic farming in these areas, building the climate resilience infrastructure like the roads, the rural connectivity. These are the need of the hour. And then the policy focus now has to more concentrated on these areas to build, although there have been initiatives to build the infrastructure, but what is required in the coastal ecosystem is to build the climate resilient infrastructure, particularly the communication, road network, and then the health infrastructure, as also the water for drinking purposes. Rainwater harvesting and rooftop rainwater harvesting in another area where we have to give a policy focus. In fact, in NABARD, we have been promoting this rainwater harvesting in a big way. Our government of India is also taking series of measures to promote under Jal Jeevan Mission large scale water harvesting so that the pressure on pumping groundwater in the coastal aquifers gets reduced and we are able to conserve this fresh water for the drinking purposes in the coastal ecosystem. In the coastal areas, we have found, particularly in the Indian context, there has been salinity ingress of the coastal aquifers as much as 8 to 10 kilometers on the eastern coast and 2 to 3 kilometers on the western coast. I think this is a great threat to the coastal agriculture because this will turn the land into an unproductive zone, so that there is a need to promote large scale water harvesting mechanism in these areas. Uh, Putting a discouraging pumping of the groundwater, as I said, in the coastal aquifers is the need, because in agriculture and the private sector, most of the water source comes from the private sources, either it's a dug well or it's a tube well or a bore well. And any pressure on these structures will further damage the coastal ecosystem, in turn the agriculture in the coastal areas. Another initiative which NABARD has taken is to collectivize the small farmers holdings in the country, and more so in the coastal areas, because in the coastal area, the communities being the poor, being highly dependent on day-to-day economics, they are most susceptible or vulnerable to the climate change impact. So we have taken an initiative to collectivize these communities in the form of the producers organization and building their capacities to access resources collectively, so that the collective strength and the action can be leveraged for better productivity enhancement and better market connectivity in these areas. Large scale agri logistics, in fact, that is the need of the hour in the coastal areas. If the agriculture has to sustain and survive in the coastal areas in the changing context, I think the digital infrastructure and the large scale logistics, the market connect logistics from the coastal areas will be required, so that they can sustain over a longer period. And in this context, the collectivization of the farming community becomes a handy, it becomes enabler to connect them to the mainstream value chain in agriculture. The emerging technologies has to be leveraged, particularly because agriculture is one sector where the penetration of the technology has been very minimal. NABARD has been supporting the new age technologies in agriculture through agri incubation centers, which we are supporting in some of the institutions, including the institutions like IIT Kharagpur and many other such institutions, where the startups or the new innovations, new technologies in agriculture, which can really scale up and connect these smaller farm holding to the main value chain. These technologies have to be leveraged, and that is why NABARD is supporting such interventions, so as to create large number of agri startups, promote them by way of the capacity building, by way of incubation services, so as to develop a viable and commercially sustainable business model for connecting the farmers organization to the mainstream value chain. Another important initiatives that NABARD at our level we are taking promotion of the farm sector is to promote or encourage demonstrative models for salinity resistant crops in the coastal agriculture. so that the sustainability of the local communities can be built up to a great extent. NABARD has been promoting the self-help groups and the joint liability groups to support and promote the rural women and empower them so as to bring them in the mainstream development of the agriculture economy. As on date, I am happy to say that in India, we have got more than 1 crores, or rather 10 millions of such groups, which are impacting more than 100 millions of families, rural families, who are becoming the very useful connect to the mainstream economy through the financial inclusion and microfinance interventions. Recently, the government of India has announced a big fund of agri infrastructure of 1 lakh crores to create the farm gate level viable, commercially viable infrastructure, so that in the country, particularly in the coastal areas, the small farm holdings can be collectivized and connected to these common infrastructures, so that the value chain, local value chain, can be strengthened and they can be brought into the mainstream agriculture. These are some of the things I thought I'll share. My thought there are technical sessions which our many experts will be deliberating, but these are some of the areas we need to focus more from the policy angle so as to improve the agriculture economy in the coastal segment and also improve the overall sustainability of the coastal agriculture. I think I will not go much details into it. I thank the organizer once again for giving me this opportunity to say a few words, and I wish a great success for this event, which has been internationally connected. We will definitely get a lot of ideas and good input so as to frame our policy in the right direction. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable remarks. And now I invite our special guest, Honorable DDG NRM ICR, Dr. S.K. Chaudhary, to kindly deliver his address. Sir, please.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all who are present here. Dr. Tilochan Mahapatraji, the Honorable Secretary there and DG of Indian Council of Agriculture Research and chief guest of today's function. Also, we have Dr. Sheikh Mohammad Bakhtiar, who is a very well-known face to all the people in ICAR, and he is Executive Chairman of BARC, Dhaka, Bangladesh. We have Dr. Luke York, the counselor from Agriculture High Commission in India. Dr. A.R. Khan, who has made wonderful statement just now. My esteemed colleagues, Dr. P.C. Sharma, the director of ICR CSSRI Karnal, and Dr. Gaurangakar, director of CRISOF Barakpur. We also have amongst us Dr. A.K. Singh, the former DDG of NRM in ICAR and former Vice Chancellor of Rajmata Vidya Rajesh India Krishi Vishwavidyalaya, Gwalior. And I find many officials and scientists, both from ICR side and university side, and the office bearers of ISCAR headquarters in Canning Town. I feel it is a great privilege and honor to be here amongst the scientific community discussing the coastal agriculture or coastal ecosystem today in this International Symposium on Coastal Agriculture, the symposium being jointly organized by ICR as well as the society. Of all the major ecosystem, if I see whether it is irrigated, rain-fed, or hill ecosystem, or other challenged ecosystem, probably the coastal ecosystem is one which factor in agriculture or food production has a significant role to play. Since the agriculture productivity in this ecosystem is generally lower than that of the average productivity of other ecosystems, about 50 to 70% of the global population lives within the 100-kilometer boundary of this coastline or 100-kilometer coastline across the globe. It accounts roughly 4 to 5% of the Earth's land. Besides, the ecosystem is highly risk-prone, and more so because of the climate change vulnerability. And these vulnerabilities in terms of low pressure blades, the other kind of problems which are appearing because of the climatic extremes, and it is causing big damage to lives and properties, and particularly the agriculture sector as a whole, including livestock population and fisheries and all. All sectors are get affected by this climatic vulnerability. And it is further compounded because of several other problems, because of high density of population and the minimum other systems, support systems. And agriculture, which is practiced in the coastal plain, it is an extension landward of the continental shelf in the ecosystem, which is constrained by a number of technological, social, or anthropological and the different problems and problem soils, or climate, or ecosystem, even water quality, or toxicity of some of the ions in the water, and its characteristic and distribution, and mainly soil and water and climate related constraints, along with management options which are available for the farmers in this area. This requires very long discussion, elaborations, and it requires some kind of recommendation on science front, some kind of recommendations on technology front, some kind of recommendations on developmental front, and some kind of recommendations for policy interventions and policy formulations. Especially the seawater intrusion, which is becoming a significant factor for salinization of the field moving landward. It is necessary to develop location-specific optimization models to decide on suitable locations of the pumping wells and rates of withdrawal of this good quality water from the ground, and the density, intensity, and the withdrawal. There should be a proper optimization of these parameters so that we are able to maintain proper aquatic region below the surface. Attempts for suitable construction of pushing saline waterfront further seaward are also the possibilities worth attempting, particularly in and around the areas where creek irrigation is followed. It is also suggested to draw a phase-wise strategy on sources of water allocation for irrigation for each country, with minimal dependence on abstraction of water from the underground aquifer and increasing dependence on use of surface water sources, along with use of improved irrigation technologies, with the overall target to increase water productivity and cropping intensity in these areas. Location-specific integrated water management models needs to be developed and validated under varying water management scenarios. I'm pretty sure that these aspects will be discussed in an elaborate manner, and some kind of strategies will be chalked out in this important symposium. In terms of INM, that is integrated nutrient management, it has been imperative to view the nutrient element and their interaction with the salt component together instead of considering in isolation. Also, now because of organic farming, which is coming on front, as our colleague Dr. A.R. Khan said, NABARD is also very serious in that, and ICR and NABARD, we have a MOU very recently signed in which we have discussed all these things: organic farming, integrated farming system, then climate change impact on agriculture as a whole, more so in the climatically vulnerable areas of India and specifically in coastal regions. It has, however, been urged that detailed characterization of coastal plains in respect of soil quality, it should be undertaken. We do not have till now this, whether it is Bangladesh or India or South Asian countries, do not have this. And we require these plans in order for enhancing and sustaining the productivity in this region. Higher rate of carbon sequestration, lower methane emissions. Coastal wetlands have been found to be more vulnerable or more valuable as a carbon sink per unit area, if you can consider, as compared to other ecosystems. It is thus prudent to concentrate on elaborate studies in future, monitoring soil organic carbon pools in different soil strata in order to create a data bank of soil organic carbon and monitor the changes, and have some benchmark sites across the coastal ecosystem, eastern coast or western coast of India, so far India is concerned, or any other country for that matter, across the coastal lines. We should have some benchmark locations where we can closely monitor these SOC dynamics, not SOC dynamics, but the emission of gases and the kind of the carbon dynamics which is taking place in this. I highlight some of the key factors which require immediate attention in coastal agriculture. One such area is excess accumulation of soluble salts and increase in alkalinity, and very specific and basic studies related to the role of magnesium and its impact on overall salt dynamics in the soils. And various texture soils are there. When we consider 100-kilometer coastline, so texture definitely varies places to place. Therefore, this accumulation pattern and the response of management tools and practices and the crops which we are growing, this requires detailed study on excess accumulation. Similarly, the acid sulfate soils, which are dominant in Sundarbans of India, Sundarbans of the parts of Bangladesh, and also some parts of Kerala, in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and somewhere in Sri Lanka also. So this predominance of acid sulfate soils and their management, this is not fully understood till now. And the productivity and production potential of these soils is there, but still it is untapped, I think. Also, the toxicity and deficiency of nutrients in these soils is also one important issue which requires detailed deliberation. As I earlier said, intrusion of seawater and seawater intrusion modeling and impact on coastal aquifer is also another area which requires a lot of discussion. Periodic inundation of soil surface and tidal impacts and climate disasters and their influence on soil properties and crop productivity is also one important area. Also, in recent past, erosion and sedimentation in coastal soils became an important issue. May not be in India, but abroad this is being now studied and discussed at length. And many papers you will find on erosion and sedimentation dynamics in soils, particularly the coastal areas. Secondary agriculture and agroecotourism, these are some of the recently emerged important issues. And these are now coming up like anything, particularly in the southern part of India, the western coast of India. Agroecotourism is emerged as one of very, very promising agro industry rather, and people are being attracted and a lot of money is generated and farmers are benefited because of this intervention. There are many things to discuss anyway in deliberation for 2-3 days now. Many things will be there, and I will be chairing one of the session wherein a lot of panel discussion will happen, and some of the good issues will be churned and some of the good recommendations will emerge. With these few words, I would like to stop here and wish the symposium will attract threadbare discussion on issues which I have mentioned above, and I'm very eager to listen to our DG now, and I find a very rich list of scientists who are taking part in overall discussions in this symposium. So wish the event a great success. Thank you very much once again for inviting me in this inaugural session. Thank you, the organizers, and Jai Hind. Thanks.
For your kind words and enlightening address. I now call upon our special guest, Dr. Syed Mohammad Bukhtar, Executive Chairman, BARC, Dhaka, for addressing the gathering. Sir, please.
Thank you. Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. Tailochan Mahapatra, Secretary, Department of Agriculture Research and Extension, and Director General of Indian Council of Agriculture Research. Respected Honorable Chair, Dr. Sen, President, Indian Society of Coastal Agriculture. Respected Dr. S.K. Chaudhary, Deputy Director General NRM, ICR. Dr. A.R. Khan, Dr. Luke York, Councillor Agriculture, Australian High Commission, New Delhi. Dr. P.C. Sharma, and distinguished participants, and ladies and gentlemen. Greetings, best wishes and felicitations to you all. I am privileged to welcome all of you of today's international seminar on transforming coastal zone for sustainable food and income security, arranged by Indian Society of Coastal Agriculture Research in collaboration with Central Soil Salinity Research Institute, Karnal. which convenes today and continues day after tomorrow. Dear colleague, Bangladesh considered this month, March, is the independence month of Bangladesh, and you'll be happy to know that Bangladesh is going to celebrate the Golden Jubilee of Bangladesh independence on 26th March. And so many top leaders are coming, especially our Indian Prime Minister Modi is coming 26th to join our Golden Jubilee of Bangladesh independence on 26th. Dear colleague, first of all, I appreciate the Indian Society of Coastal Agriculture Research for arranging such important international webinar under 6 thematic areas with the objective towards well-being of coastal dwellers. I thank the organizer for arranging this very important international webinar. Dear colleague, we as countries having same coastline are very much aware about prevailing problem in common. Let me highlight some of these as an attempt to remind and concentrate on mitigating process. The coast people usually are short of enough harvest and work as livelihood support due to salinity, quality irrigation, drinking water, and frequent sea-driven heats, leading them to a vulnerable circumstances. And global warming manifested by changing rainfall pattern and extreme climate event are inflicting added climate vulnerabilities to livelihood resource and lives, necessitating a special attention. Dear participants, let me draw your attention on Bangladesh coast. It covers about 20% of the country and over 30% of the net cultivable area. There is 0.83 million hectares arable land out of 2.85 million hectares of coastal and offshore areas. We are lucky and blessed that both Bangladesh and India share the Sundarban as a part of their coast and is a reserve mangrove forest, and also UNESCO declared a World Heritage, a unique natural habitat for millions of biological entities. The coast and offshore areas included tidal, estuaries, and river floodplain in the south along the Bay of Bengal. The coast accommodates about 30% of the total population and offers a diversity of natural resources such as marine fisheries and shrimp, forest, salt, and minerals, and a location for high potential exploitation of both onshore and offshore natural gas, export processing zone, harbor, airport, tourism complex, and industrial unit are located in this area. In this aspect, the coast is considered as an area of immense potentiality for diverse economic activities. Dear colleague, let us have a flash on challenges with special reference to Bangladesh coast. Among innumerable limitations, key challenges are noted such as saline intrusion in soil and water, frequent hit by storms and cyclone, followed by sea and river erosion, habitat destruction and loss of biodiversity, unwanted salinity intrusion for fishing and indiscriminate fishing, unregulated water extraction for irrigation, limited agro-technologies and shortage of non-farming livelihood activities, with dissemination and inappropriate adoption of modern technologies. These are the major challenges, especially for Bangladesh coastal. So I would like to mention some of the undertaken measures government policies for mitigating coastal bound difficulties, such as Bangladesh already prepared a Delta Plan 2100, Perspective Plan of 2020 to 2041. Recently, we at our Ministry of Government adopted National Agriculture Policy 2018, Master Plan for Agriculture Development in the Southern Delta, and recently our Prime Minister launched a fifth five-year plan from 2021 to 2025. And major activities are undertaken, such as farming system research has been scaled up, efforts on developing suitable crop varieties and production technologies are successful and progressing further. Crop zoning mapping is under steady progress to increase productivity. We are also promoting blue economy, including seaweed, and agriculture development progress are aligned with SDGs goal. Dear participants, we are fully aware that more activities are to be undertaken to make coastal living easy and comfortable. It is necessary to promote effective, efficient, widespread, and decentralized effort and governments by best management practices in a holistic approach to draw full benefit out of coast. A well-concerted strategies, policies, action plan, and huge commitment from the key player are very much needed to bring a change in the livelihood pattern of affected people. Dear colleagues, for an inclusive growth, every nation should be capable of mitigating impact on various climate vulnerabilities for a continued and sustained growth. In this regard, I recognize the symposium as a golden opportunity to share our ideas, share our success technologies, stories, and adapt proven and potential technologies. So I hope those are attending today's seminar from different countries, different organizations, universities are quite able to formulate a truly stakeholder recommendation, and this will be the serve for the researcher and the policy maker, because for this region, it's true, the technological innovation and the policy support by the government only the way to mitigate the rising problem in the coastal areas. So with that note, again, a very welcome to you all. And I hope the next session will be fruitful and you will enjoy the next 2 days. And the seminar will be productive and fruitful. So thank you all.
Thank you, sir, for your kind words. Dr. Liu Kyok, Consular Agriculture High Commission of Australia, New Delhi, India, is here with us today morning for this function. Now I invite him to kindly deliver his address.
Great, thank you. So I'd firstly like to thank the organisers for giving me the opportunity to speak at this international symposium on coastal agriculture. So as previously mentioned, my name is Dr. Luke York. I am the Councillor for Agriculture here at the Australian High Commission in New Delhi. So although I'm based in New Delhi, I'm also responsible for market access and agricultural trade issues in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, and Bhutan. So I represent the Australian government in those discussions. So as you're probably quite familiar, as an island nation, coastal regions have always been an important feature of the Australian identity. Yet coastal agriculture faces many challenges, and these challenges are expected to increase over the coming years. So looking across the agenda, I'm really pleased to see that the world agricultural researchers are not shying away from these challenges. You're really tackling them head on. And that creates many opportunities to learn from each other and work together to share and find creative solutions to some of these problems that we're being faced with. So as you may be aware, Australia is very susceptible to and already feeling some of the impacts of the increasing challenges and conditions faced by coastal agriculture and coastal ecosystems more broadly. So issues of climate change, saltwater incursion, increased urbanization and competition for land, and agricultural runoff into marine ecosystems are all issues that the Australian government looks to the international research community to provide analysis, which we can then use to inform policy. So the importance of this cannot be understated. So for example, approximately 87% of the Australian population lives along the coastline. So that's approximately 22 million people. And as we've just heard from our colleagues in Bangladesh, there's similar sorts of figures for numerous countries around the world. So this really raises the stakes for coastal ecosystems. We really can't afford to get it wrong, and good research is essential for good policy. So this is why the Australian government is actively engaged across a vast number of programs and policies to understand and address the issues faced by coastal agriculture and coastal ecosystems more broadly. So for example, the Australian government is strongly committed to the World Heritage listed Great Barrier Reef off the coast of Queensland. So the Great Barrier Reef is one of the world's natural wonders and is the largest coral reef on Earth. However, it is unfortunately an icon under pressure. So the Great Barrier Reef Outlook Report of 2019 identifies key threats to the reef as climate change, direct uses such as overfishing, poor water quality from land-based runoff and coastal development, which includes agriculture. And the 2017 Scientific Consensus Statement notes that the main source of pollutants from the Great Barrier Reef catchment areas is runoff from agriculture due to the large land area that it covers. So the Australian government has committed to protecting the Great Barrier Reef, and the centrepiece is our reef protection efforts is the Reef 2015 Long-Term Sustainability Plan. So it's jointly developed and implemented with the Queensland government. So the Australian government is investing 1.9 billion Australian dollars to implement the Reef 2050 plan over the decade to 2014. So practical ways in which we're helping farmers to reduce their impact on the reef is through farmer and grower engagement and extension support. So across the Great Barrier Reef catchments, there are approximately 14,000 farms and grazing properties. So through our programs, we're helping farmers and graziers to adopt better land management practices that not only improve their profitability, but also reduce the amount of sediments and nutrients, chemicals entering the rivers and flowing into the reef. So for example, the $46 million Reef Trust Reef Alliance project supported more than 1,500 land managers across 1.8 million hectares in the cane, grazing, dairy and horticulture and cropping industries to improve their land management practices. So building on this momentum that they've gained through that program, a $3.5 million Reef Trust Partnership Grant is also providing one-to-one extension to more than 460 landholders to move towards best management practice for cane farming and grazing. So a little closer to India, through the Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research, or ACR, the Australian government has been funding the cropping system intensification program in the Ganges coastal zone in Bangladesh and West Bengal since 2015. So the project has made significant achievements over the last 5 years, and ACR has funded a second phase of the project due to commence later this year. So the project is a really important example of how cooperation and exchange of experience and knowledge amongst the scientists of Bangladesh, India, and Australia can deliver high quality research that is capable of sustainably improving food security in coastal agricultural systems and influencing international policy. So I might wrap it up there, but I would just close by strongly encouraging all participants to really engage with the broad range of experts present at this event. So this symposium is a really excellent opportunity to gain new knowledge and new perspectives of the complex and challenging issues faced by agriculture now and into the future. So I'll hand you back to the chair now, but thank you for providing the opportunity to give this address.
Thank you, sir, for a valuable speech. Ladies and gentlemen, ISCA bestows fellow awards to eminent scientists working in the field of agriculture and allied sectors in the coastal region. We are now happy to announce the fellow awards of ISCA. I would like to request all the delegates to just unmute their mic so that they can give a round of applause to the award winners. First, I would like to Dr. Sushant Kumar Sarangi, ICR CSSRI RLS Canning Town, West Bengal, to accept the award by saying, "I heartily acknowledge the honor." A big applause to him. Dr. Sarangi. Dr. Sarangi, please unmute.
Please be quick, please.
Yeah, I think so. We have lost Dr. Sarangi. Now, I would like to call upon Dr. Gauranga Kaur, Director, ICR Krija, Barakpur, West Bengal, to accept the award by saying, "I heartily acknowledge the order." The honor, Dr. Kaur.
Yeah, thank you very much.
A big applause to him. Now, our third award winner is Dr. S.V. Sawardekar. Sawardekar, Professor and Interest Plant Biotechnology Center, College of Agriculture, Dr. B.S. Konkan, Krishi Vidyapith, Dapoli, Maharashtra. I request him to accept the award by saying, "I heartily acknowledge the honor." A big applause to him. Sawardekar.
Sorry, my mic was mute. Now I happily accept the honor given by the Indian Society of Coastal Agricultural Research, and I am very much grateful to the ISCAR and the Executive Council members and the Farming Committee of the Coastal Agriculture. Thank you very much.
Thank
Hello,
you.
sir. Hello, sir. Myself, Dr. Sawardekar. Thanks for honoring me.
Thank you.
And I am very much.
Now,
thank you.
ISCAR also bestows Dr. JSP Yadav Best Paper Award for the research paper published in the journal, and the Best Paper Award for the years 2018 to 20 goes to groundwater salinity modeling in southwest region of Bangladesh, considering climate change, that has been authored by Dr. Mohammad Tariqul Islam and his co-workers, and this paper was published in the 2020 issue of the journal with volume number 38 and number 2. So I request Dr. Islam to kindly accept the honor by saying that he is accepting the honor.
Thank you. Good morning to all, and thanks, Chair Lord, to ICR for selecting our paper, the best paper. The Indian Society of Coastal Agriculture and Research. Thank you, and I accept.
Thank you. We now move on to the next phase. The society has brought out 2 publications on this occasion. One is the Book of Abstracts, and the other a souvenir. So may I request all the dignitaries present here today to unmute themselves, and while releasing these 2 publications on this e-webinar. So I request them to kindly release the application by giving a round of applause. So please, so first we'll be releasing the Book of Abstracts. And then we have souvenir. Here today on the occasion of the International Symposium on Coastal Agriculture, Transforming Coastal Zone for Sustainable Food and Security organized by ISCAR in collaboration with ICR Sarai Karnal. So thank you one and all, and congratulations to the award winners. Now it's my privilege to invite Honorable Secretary Dear and DG ICR, Dr. Trilochan Mohapatra, to deliver his inaugural address. Sir, I kindly invite you to address this gathering.
The screen sharing, please.
Thank you very much.
Don't seconds.
Kindly unshare your screen.
Yeah.
Kindly unshare your screen, yes. Here, Dr. H.S. Sen, President of Indian Society of Coastal Agricultural Research. Our special guest, Dr. Sheikh Mohammad Bakhtiar, Executive Chairman, Bangladesh Agricultural Research Council. Our guest of honor, Dr. Luke York, Councillor Agriculture, Australian High Commission, New Delhi. My valued colleague, Dr. S.K. Chaudhary, Deputy Director General, Natural Resource Management, Indian Council of Agriculture Research. Dr. P.C. Sharma, Director of Central Soil Salinity Research Institute, Karnal. Dr. Burman, Organizing Secretary of the International Symposium on Coastal Agriculture. Other colleagues from various countries who are participating in this particular webinar. My own colleagues from the Indian Council of Agriculture Research and the state agricultural universities and state governments. All delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure on my part to be associated with this international symposium. Thanks to Dr. H.S. Sen for being very persistent and very particular about me participating in this international symposium. Though I was reluctant and explained that probably I do not know much about the coastal agriculture in terms of research I haven't conducted, and may not be the befitting on my part to speak about it. But anyway, so such webinars, conferences, they are supposed to be addressed by some person, and probably he had chosen me. I know him for a pretty long time as a director when he was director of the Central Institute on Jute and Allied Fiber Research, Barakpur. So I have regards and very deep regards for him. So I agreed. And I'm here, thanks Dr. Sen once again profusely for continuing and insisting that I should be here. I'm extremely happy to see online Dr. Bakhtiar. Dr. Bakhtiar has been, a good friend for quite a long time. We know each other. Not only that, he visited here, he also invited me to Dhaka. And, we have, very good interaction. And that time he was at the SARC Agriculture Center. And moreover, our friendly relationships between the two countries gets further cemented through these relationships. And also opportunities are further provided through such international conferences and symposia, where we sit together in a common platform to deliberate on issues and problems of relevance to our countries. So, Dr. Bakhtiar, a very hearty welcome on my own personal behalf to you and to your other colleagues who are there. Also, Dr. Luke York, Councillor Agriculture, Australian High Commission. I'm sure the kind of situation Australia faces. In fact, the whole country is surrounded by the ocean. And the coastal agriculture and its relevance for Australia is huge. And rightly, Dr. Luke has already highlighted. And very importantly, again, India and Australia have been interacting on various facets of agriculture, including coastal agriculture. And I'm happy to see Dr. Luke York, to listen to him. And my own colleague, Dr. Chaudhary, and to all of you, my own behalf, and from the Indian Council of Agriculture Research and Department of Agriculture Research and Education, a very hearty welcome. And congratulations to Dr. Sen and his colleagues, the Indian Society of Coastal Agriculture Research colleagues, for having this particular international symposium organized, which has been planned for a pretty long time. Dr. S.K. Chaudhary did inform me that we have Dr. A.K. Singh, our former DDG Natural Resource Management, and Vice Chancellor of, former Vice Chancellor of one of our agriculture universities. We have also, I heard Dr. A.R. Khan from NABARD, and many others whom I cordially welcome on my own behalf. The symposium, though time available with me is very limited, I will not be able to really delve deeper into it. The symposium has chosen the topic transforming coastal zone for sustainable food and income security. This is something which is a very challenging one. Transforming coastal zone and coastal agriculture for food and income security is a huge challenge. Global agriculture and so also Indian agriculture was focusing on enhancing production. More production brings in more returns to the farmers. And that is how more production was emphasized in view of the deficit situation that was quite relevant. Over the years, global agriculture as well as Indian agriculture has moved quite far. And today, we have here in India and other countries in the neighborhood, food self-sufficiency. On many fronts, we have quite a bit of satisfactory developments. Indian agriculture has done pretty well. For this year, the prediction is, the assessment is that we will be crossing 300 million tons mark for food grains. 20 million tons mark for horticulture crops, and so on and so forth. So agriculture is moving at a faster rate. Our growth rate has been close to 4% and quite significant growth despite COVID-19. And in fact, in case of milk production, our growth is close to 6%, around 6%. Fishery sector, even more than 10%. So that's the kind of remarkable growth rate that you see in Indian agricultural sectors. But coming to the challenges that we face, that we have small marginal land holding, 85% of our farmers being small and marginal. And when we talk of coastal agriculture, IPCC says in its fourth report that more than 2.4 billion people staying in coastal region, which is about 100 kilometers. Dr. Chaudhary was also talking about this, 100 kilometers from the seashore. It's a huge population, close to 40, little more than 40% of the people at the global level residing in coastal region. It's quite a dense region with regard to population density is quite high. So the anthropogenic activities in the coastal agriculture, coastal zone is quite huge, and that puts pressure on the ecology. So that is a very serious challenge to sustainable production systems and increased income for the farmers. Today in India, Honorable Prime Minister has given a call for doubling farmers' income. When you look at the challenges, they are so formidable. It's not just population density in the coastal region, but the climate change. The climate change is a serious threat, and whether it is temperature rise, we are already 1 degree centigrade more than around that, more than what we had in pre-industrial era. And it's going to reach 1.5 degrees centigrade by turn of the century. And in fact, some predictions say by 2050, we might reach there because we are increasing temperature by 0.2 degrees centigrade per decade. Quite faster increase in temperature. So this is a very serious threat, and it is associated with reduced productivity. In case of wheat, it said that 10% growth would be, yield reduction would be there for every 1 degree centigrade rise in temperature. And so also rice. Temperature rise, carbon dioxide rise. Carbon dioxide rise is supposed to increase rice yield, but temperature rise, which is concomitant, will again compensate, rather counterbalance that. And in the process, you will not have much of gain, particularly in case of Kharif season. And this is another important area, that the population density being high and adding to anthropogenic negative impacts to the coastal zone, and the temperature rise added to it, it's a big challenge. Temperature rise is again associated with sea level rise, leading to inundation and intrusion, and all kinds of problems associated with that. In fact, during 1900 to 2010, sea level has risen by about 19 centimeters. That's what I'm told. And it's going to rise further. By the end of this century, we might be crossing 50 centimeter increase in the sea level, and some say it might go up to 98 centimeters. And the salinity concomitantly is increasing. The coastal areas getting submerged is one problem. Getting frequent flooding is one problem, but the other one being the kind of salinity increasing, and it is predicted, assessed, that by 2050, about 50% of arable land of the world would be rendered saline. That's something which is very frightening. When you describe all this, that you see that where are those rays of hope for us? Where can we pin our hope? What is that we should be doing? And certainly a symposium of this kind, I mentioned, and I was going through the kind of sessions, very well planned, and I believe you will be covering most aspects which are relevant. The anthropogenic pressure, how do we really minimize this pressure? For instance, if I have to say that the coastal region mangrove ecology, the mangrove forest, almost 5 million hectares is reduced during past 30 years, 30 to 40 years. And it's all because of anthropogenic pressure. And of course, the tidal effects are always there. The tsunami effects are always there. So how do we really counterbalance these changes in terms of climate and in terms of anthropogenic pressure and move forward? I think a long way to go. Fortunately for us, the coastal ecosystem is positive for carbon. There's plenty of carbon sequestration taking place. And methane emissions are relatively lower. So these coastal wetlands, and in fact shallow lowland ecosystem, which is actually cropped and where rice is grown in 2 seasons. Our own study at Central Rice Research Institute has revealed that the system is net carbon sink. So this is something which is a kind of positive with regard to the coastal system. How do we really enrich this further? What all we should be doing actually to enrich and strengthen our activities? First of all, building institutional framework to work on this, because without that you can't just succeed. India took note of all these problems long time ago. Why? Because India has a very long coastline, more than 7,500 kilometer coastline, including the island coastline. 9 states, 2 island regions, Andaman, Nicobar and Lakshadweep. All together, it's a huge ecosystem which is actually there for India. And that's the reason why Indian government recognized the importance of this ecosystem and built institution, that is Central Coastal Agriculture Research Institute, way back in 1976 at Goa. And in fact, before that, recognizing that salinity would increase, not only inland salinity, also the coastal salinity, the Soil Salinity Research Institute was established way back in 1969. And in 1978, we established the Central Island Agriculture Research Institute at Port Blair. So institutional framework is very, very essential to understand what is actually happening. And this is very, very important in today's context. Across nations, this has to be our emphasis, that we must build institutions of relevance and intensify our efforts, research efforts in these institutions to work on coastal zones and agriculture in this region. When I say agriculture, it includes agriculture and allied sector activities, so that we build information, build a science-based decision support system for helping this ecosystem, very fragile ecosystem. And this is very, very essential. And I'm sure through this, we should be able to build networks, international networks across nations is very, very crucial. Institutions can do their work individually, but what is more important is building networks across institutions to understand coastal ecosystems, very fragile, fragile ecosystem, the threats to this ecosystem, the opportunities which are available in this ecosystem, and how we can capitalize on the existing strengths and take advantage of our expertise, which is scattered across nations. And can we really build, as a part of our deliberations, a kind of substantial part through actually substantial part of deliberation during this particular symposium, a particular network, international network across nations. I think that would be very, very, rewarding for all of us. Whatever we are discussing, and at the global level, we must see the gaps. What are the participatory approaches in addressing the farmers which are small and marginal in coastal ecosystem? And this participatory approach is of crucial relevance. I remember some years ago, we visited Bali Island in Sundarbans of West Bengal. And we can clearly see how vulnerable the agriculture is in that part of the country. And that requires participatory approach, hand-holding. And probably that is a very important component of our activity while we are trying to address the risks, minimize the risks, and build sustainable agricultural production system and enhanced income in this zone. How do we use more and more technology? I'll touch upon few points because time is limiting. How do we really use more and more of technology? This region, coastal region, is quite advanced in certain segments, but in other segments, particularly in island ecosystem, and some of the coastal region of the mainland, we do see quite a bit of weakness with regard to technology use. The farmers being low-income group farmers, situations in this region. So that's a big challenge, use of technology. I believe that given the emphasis on kind of infrastructure funds and the kind of government schemes, I strongly believe that technology use needs to be really accelerated. I should emphasize here that India again planned for mainstreaming technology use through climate resilient village platforms. Dr. A.K. Singh, DDG, was then DDG NRM at the Indian Council of Agriculture Research. And while planning for this, we did think of the coastal region and its fragile nature. And almost 8 to 10 of our climate resilient villages are there in this ecosystem. For instance, in 24 Pargana of West Bengal, where you do find a climate resilient village existing there. And kind of lessons we learned with regard to the technology interventions that need to be really mainstreamed for helping the farmers to addressing the challenges there. And similarly, one in Odisha, in Kendrapara, which is highly cyclone prone. In fact, tsunami impacts have also been there in the past. And similarly, in Ramanathapuram in case of Tamil Nadu. I'm citing few examples of how this climate resilient village system in this region are providing deeper insight into the technology mainstreaming, which is essential to address the impacts of climate change in these regions, and particularly the coastal ecosystem. How do we really go further with regard to this use of technology? I remember during my days at Central Rice Research Institute, Cuttack, we are promoting Swarna Sab-1. I visited Bangladesh and I saw Binadhan 8 and Binadhan 10, again, salt-tolerant ones, which were very popular, getting popularity there. We introduced them in India. And there are a few other, Sab-1, introgress lines are also, varieties are also here. So the salt-tolerant varieties, flood-tolerant varieties, and these traits getting pyramided. Siardhan 801, 802 from Central Rice Research Institute, Cuttack. Again, a big step in the direction of putting multiple genes, the drought, the submergence, and in certain instances, even now, the salinity getting added there. So we have this kind of technology developments and International Rice Research Institute, again, supporting this work in India and Bangladesh in a big way. So technology mainstreaming is very, very important. Technology demonstration, hand-holding, in the participatory mode with the farmers, as we are doing in climate village system, is very, very important. Use of technology in the form of the drones or even remote sensing to appropriately map and build a decision support system with regard to use of, for instance, the appropriate use of soil, the land systems for various cropping patterns and integrated farming systems is another area which is very, very crucial. I think in this regard, we are lagging behind tremendously. So this requires, again, the international, collaborations. How do we use our, artificial intelligence system, machine learning system, and use data from large-scale data which is available in respective countries and regions, and then build decision support system using all these modern tools and technologies. Gender in this region is, again, a very, very important point. How do we really mainstream gender and bring them to the forefront? There is plenty of opportunities as well as challenges. By hand-holding, we can make them entrepreneurs of tomorrow. Mention was made that entrepreneurship is very, very important. If agriculture has to be remunerative, if agriculture has to be lucrative, has to be built as a business model in the coastal zone, I strongly believe that women need to be trained, incubated to be the entrepreneurs in this region. India is trying in a small way. We have built 50 incubation centers, and we are building, in fact, startups. More than 500 startups we have built during past few years, 4 or 5 years. But there is plenty of opportunity to actually go in this direction. Fishery is very, very important. The marine fishery catch is declining, particularly in few nautical miles from the coast. Deep sea fishing is essential, but can we go for, in fact, aquaculture system, marine aquaculture systems? How do we really build that platform so that we have sustainable fishery system built out? Responsible fishery system built up. Nitrogen being applied through river system, reaching the coastal zone and polluting it. That's a serious threat again, another area. How do we really purify this region, the coastal region? Reduce the use of nitrogen in the inland and help this ecosystem further. That's a big challenge. And similarly, the kind of problem we face with regard to the mangrove ecology, as I stated. Can we really strengthen the wetlands, the mangroves in these coastal ecologies? The flora and fauna, the biodiversity getting extinct in the coastal zone, that's a serious concern. And in fact, it is said that 30% of the animal and plant species would be wiped out because of this global temperature rise, which is happening and moving very fast. By 2050, if we reach 1.5 degrees centigrade more increase in temperature, probably by end of this century, you can imagine what would happen to the flora and fauna in the coastal zone. How do we really protect the biodiversity in this region? I think that is another serious challenge to, the sustainability of coastal ecosystem. While I talk of the mainland, the coastal region, but the ocean system, particularly the coral reefs and the coral reef ecosystem, quite vulnerable. In fact, getting negatively impacted very significantly worldwide. It's not just at the Indian Peninsula, but worldwide. In fact, carbon dioxide levels in seawater particularly increasing and impacting negatively, particularly the microalgae. And that is again impacting this ecosystem, particularly coral reef ecosystem. And this is again a very serious challenge. And what all we can do to protect it? Can we do something? Deep sea water studies are lacking actually. And in this region, what is happening in the ocean, unless we understand the currents, the temperature, the kind of, the tides, the volcanic eruptions taking place under the sea, and all that, unless we understand, probably will not be able to address what is happening there. So the anthropogenic activities are to be minimized to save the ecological disaster. So who would be really doing this? And unless we actually create awareness, and creating awareness is very, very important. So through these symposia, conferences, and beyond this, I believe, and the activities of this society is very praiseworthy. And I'm sure there will be more and more of, awareness being created. For instance, for more of afforestation and strengthening the kind of mangrove ecosystem which is there in the coastal region. Sustainable, responsible fishing in the oceans is also very, very, marine ecosystem is very, very important. And that needs to be really promoted through extensive awareness programs. And similarly, the agricultural systems where the chemical use is extensive, that need to be really, again, addressed through creating awareness and proper education of the farmers. So we have tremendous responsibility for our future generations. So I'm sure the deliberations in this symposium would be quite rewarding. This common platform which has been provided for countries in the region to deliberate on issues and concerns, to address them by way of networks, as I said, would be very helpful in defining our future course of action. developing new pathways, finding resources, building resources, taking care of natural resources which are available in this region, protecting biodiversity, using newer technologies which are there at this point in time for precision systems to be effectively utilized, and working with the farmers, mainstreaming gender. These are some of the areas which I highlighted are quite relevant. And I'm sure you will go beyond these points which I mentioned because you are more knowledgeable than what I am, because I haven't worked in this particular area. So I take this opportunity once again to thank profusely Dr. Sen, Dr. Chaudhary, and other colleagues for inviting me to be part of this symposium, and also listen to many erudite speakers to learn from them many new facts and enrich myself. So thank you, Professor Sen, for giving me this opportunity. And I wish this program a grand success. Wishing you all the very best. And thank you, Dr. Bakhtiar, for joining us from Bangladesh, and also Dr. Luke Work for being with us in this inaugural session. Thanks to all of you, and thanks delegates, thanks to press and media if they are here today in this particular program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your nice and very informative speech. Really very encouraging for us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor.
Very much, sir. Your thought-provoking address will certainly enlighten us and guide us for addressing the various issues concerning, in general, the agriculture and coastal agriculture and allied sectors in particular. Thank you very much, sir. So with this, we come to the very fag end of this program. Now I request Dr. D. Burman, the organizing secretary of this webinar, and honorary secretary ISCA to convey the vote of thanks. Dr. Burman.
Thank you, Dr. Lama. Honorable dignitaries present in the inaugural session of this ISCA webinar, our most valued invited and distinguished guests, delegates, and the electronic and print media. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure and a great privilege for me to have this opportunity to thank this august gathering here on this behalf of Indian Society of Coastal Agriculture Research in this inaugural session of ISCA webinar. So the very presence of our Honorable Dr. Tirunochan Mahapatraji, the Secretary Dear and Director General of Indian Society of Coastal Agriculture Research, in today's program, in spite of his extremely busy schedule, is an affection, reflection of the importance that is attached to the commitment of the nations to agricultural research, especially the coastal agriculture research. We are all inspired by your gracious presence, sir. I, on behalf of ISCA, guest invited delegates, and on my own behalf, extended to you, sir, a very hearty vote of thanks for kindly inaugurating our today's International Symposium of Coastal Agriculture as a chief guest, and also for a very illuminating and thought-provoking address. My very special thanks to Dr. Luke, Dr. Counselor, Australian High Commission, New Delhi, for kindly accepting our request to join us here today in this inaugural session of the symposium. Sir, we have been greatly encouraged by your gracious presence, and thank you for your address. Honorable Dr. Sheikh Mohammed Bakhtiar, Executive Chairman, Bangladesh Agriculture Research Council, and special guest for today's program. I'm indeed grateful to you, sir, for sharing your time from your valuable schedule to be with us at this occasion. Sir, we have been greatly encouraged by your gracious presence and immensely benefited by your inspiring address. We are delighted to have among us Honorable Dr. S.K. Chaudhary, Deputy Director General, Natural Resource Management, ICAR New Delhi, and the special guest, We are extremely thankful to you, sir, for your gracious presence in this function and for your address in spite of your very busy schedule. Thank you very much, sir, for your support guidance for organizing this symposium. Respected Dr. Yar Khan, Chief General Manager, NABARD, Kolkata, I wish to express our profuse thanks to you, sir, for your presence in this inaugural session and your valuable address. I'd like to take this opportunity to express our hearty thanks to our most respected Dr. HSN, the President of ISKCR, for your immense support at every point of time to organize this event, great event. Sir, I don't think that I can't thank you enough, and I therefore simply admire you. We are extremely grateful to our Dr. P.C. Sharma, the Director, Central Soil Salinity Research Institute, for your support, guidance, cooperation, and encouragement for organizing this symposium in collaboration with Central Soil Salinity Research Institute. And I take this opportunity to thank all our distinguished invitees for kindly accepting our invite to attend this program, the Indian Society of Coastal Agriculture Research. Thanks to all conveners of the different sessions and subsessions, chairman, co-chairman, rapporteurs of the different technical session, plenum lecture, and panel discussion, especially the speakers of the plenum lectures, panelists, and other invited speakers and speakers who will be delivering their talks in different oral and poster presentations. We thank you all, sir, from on behalf of the society. I'd like to thank all the office bearers and members of the ISKCR, particularly those who are from the headquarters, for your kind guidance and kind help for organizing this program. ISKCR also greatly grateful to sponsor Indian Council of Agriculture Research, Australian Centre for International Agriculture Research, National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, National and Jute Board for sponsoring this symposium. Thanks to our publication partners, Springer Nature. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for media persons, both print and electronic. Thanks to WeCard Incorporation for your technical support for organizing this webinar. Thank you all once again. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Burman, for delivering the vote of thanks. Now we formally come to the end of this session. So immediately we will be starting the next session. It's the third Dr. JSP Yadav Memorial Lecture, which will be delivered by Dr. A.K. Singh, former DDG NRM ICR and former Vice Chancellor RVS KBB Gwalior. I now hand over the session to the convener.
Dr. Kadrika, please. You have to introduce the chairman, na? Kindly introduce the chairman.
Yes, sir, just a moment.
Yes, he's here. Can you unmute your mic, please?
Yes,
sir, can you unmute your mic on the bottom? On the bottom left, you'll find the...
Just a minute, just a minute. Now we'll start our special session, that is Dr. JSP Yadav Memorial Lecture. This session will be chaired by Dr. S.B. Kadrekar. Dr. Kadrekar is a very well-known person in India for his enormous contributions, particularly in the field of soil science. He was the former Vice Chancellor of Dr. V.S. Kankun Krishi Vishwavidyalaya, Dapoli, Maharashtra in India. And
He is our former, not former, is the, I can say, is a founder member of this our society, that is Indian Society and Coastal Agriculture Research, and he is the patron of our society. He will be chairing this session today, and Dr. A.K. Singh, he will be delivering Dr. JSP Yadav Memorial Lecture, and this session will be recorded by Dr. S.K. Sharing, the Principal Scientist, Central Soil Salinity Research Institute, Canning Regional Research Station in Canning Town. So now I request Dr. S.P. Kadrekar sir to start this session.
Can you unmute, please?
Yes.
Thank
you so much, Dr.
Barman. Something about it. It is unmuted. Please. Please go ahead.
Wait,
please go ahead.
Sir, bola, Kadrekar sir, bola, please.
Yeah. Very good morning to everybody. I am very happy to chair this session in not less than our Padma Shri Dr. JSP Yadav. Respected Dr. Sen, esteemed co-chairman Dr. Bandopadhyay, Honorable Speaker Dr. A.K. Singh, all participants, members of the ISCAR, ladies and gentlemen. I am very happy and grateful to the organizers for giving me an opportunity to chair the session. My association with Padma Shri JSP Yadavji dates back to May 1971. That is almost about now 50 years from now, when I had gone as a participant in the Summer Institute on Saline and Alkali Soils and its management at Central Soil Salinity Research Institute, Karnal. Among the various faculty members for the Summer Institute. Hello.
Yes,
I observed in Dr.
Please proceed.
I observed in Dr. Yadavji that he was very soft-spoken and scholastic in delivering lectures. I still remember that during the Summer Institute, he had taken the participants to a saline soil spot to examine soil profile. It was my first experience to examine the soil profile, and that too under expertise of Dr. Yadavji. These memories still linger in my mind. Dr. Yadav, on completion of graduation in 1946, post-graduation in 1951, and PhD program in 1958, he completed postgraduate diploma in forestry in soil discipline from Oxford University, United Kingdom in 1959. He served in the College of Agriculture at Kanpur in UP from 1947 to 56 and various capacities. He then moved to Forest Research Institute, Dehradun. From 1956 to 69, he was there. Later on, he worked as project coordinator from 1969 to 74, and later on as director of the Soil Salinity Research Institute, Karnal, from 1974 to 1982. He was selected and appointed as Vice Chancellor of Haryana Agricultural University at Hisar where he worked for 2 years. After this, he occupied the most prestigious position in ICAR as Chairman, Agricultural Scientist Recruitment Board from 1983 to 86. Later on, he worked as expert consultant in FAO, USAID, UNDP, World Bank, PPCA, APC, and United Rice Land, etc. In view of the illustrious positions he held in various organizations and his profound experience, Dr. Yadav worked as President of Indian Society of Soil Science, Agricultural Society of India, Indian Society of Water Management, Indian Society of Salinity Research Society, Indian Society of Coastal Agriculture Research. He also worked as Chairman of Research Advisory Committee of various research institutes like CSWC RTI, Dehradun, Indian Institute of Soil Research, Lucknow, Kazri, Jodhpur, and Indian Institute of Soil Science, Bhopal. He also worked either as a chairman or member of professional committees like quinquennial review teams for CSSRI, Karnal, and IRI, New Delhi, to name a few. As a result of this vast professional experience, he was elected as Fellow of the Chemical Society at London, National Academy of Sciences, India, Indian Society of Agricultural Chemists, Indian Society of Coastal Agricultural Research, Soil Conservation Society of India, Indian Society of Water Management, and others. Now, I would like to introduce to you today's speaker for the memorial lecture, Dr. A.K. Singh. He is alumnus of the prestigious Indian Agriculture Research Institute, New Delhi. He completed the postgraduate doctoral research as DAD Fellow at the University of Hohenheim, Germany in 1983 and Diploma in Farm Water Management 92 from University of Arizona, USA. Dr. Singh started his career as Scientist S1 in ICR in 1976, Director, Water Technology Center, IARI from 1999 to 2007. He was also acting as Director of IARI during 2005 to 2006 and DDG NRM ICR from 207 to 2012. He was selected as Vice Chancellor in RVS Agriculture University at Gwalior in 2012 and successfully completed 5 years. He has carried out outstanding basic, strategic, and adaptive research in the field of natural resources management and with special focus on soil, water, plant, atmospheric interactions, crop growth stimulation modeling, monitoring of hydrological parameters in watersheds. He has made significant contributions in the use of remote sensing techniques in agriculture. The first systematic study on aerobic rice production system in India was perhaps done under his guidance. As DDG NRM, he was instrumental in the formulation of district-wise contingency plans for tackling extreme weather conditions. As Vice Chancellor of the newly formed Agricultural University as Gwalior, he created state-of-art infrastructure at the headquarters as well as at colleges and KVKs. Dr. Singh has received several awards and fellowships in recognition of his professional experience, including honorable membership of Indian Society of Soil Science in 2011, Bharat Ratna by the Soil Conservation Society of India in 2012, Dr. C. Subramaniam Outstanding Teacher Award from 2007 to 2008, Sri Hari Krishna Shastri Memorial Award in 2009, and many more prestigious awards. Currently, Dr. Singh is the Vice President at National Academy of Agricultural Sciences, New Delhi. He has more than 400 publications at his credit in the form of books, bulletins, research papers, and popular articles. It is our privilege that such a renowned scientist is today's speaker to deliver the third memorial lecture. May I now request Dr. Singh to deliver the lecture. Thanking you all for patient hearing. Thanks a lot and good day.
Sir, respected Dr. Kadrekar, sir, it's a pleasure and a privilege to be delivering a lecture under your chairmanship, and it's very good to see you safe and healthy after such a long time, seeing you after many, many years.
Yeah.
And I'm also very, very grateful to the organizers, Indian Society for Coastal Agriculture, and President Dr. Sen, for giving me this honor of delivering this third JSP Yadav Memorial Lecture. I think, as you all know, that he was my father, and a role model, I would say, for all soil scientists in particular, because he started his schooling, going from a village to the school on foot every day, trudging every day. And then, of course, the rest, Dr. Kadrekar has given a very detailed prediction. So it's a really a matter of pride for me to be delivering this lecture, and certainly to the organization of this particular conference, giving me this opportunity. The topic that I have chosen was on the impact of climate change on coastal and island ecosystems. I think this particular topic has been Can I share this? I would like to share this screen.
Yeah, it is coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
It's coming?
Presentation mode, sir.
Is it visible now?
Yes, sir.
It is visible, sir.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. So, I think in the inaugural session, it has already been the various issues. It has been highlighted by our the Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. Taruj Mahapatra, Secretary in DGICR, and all the very, very distinguished guests of honor, Dr. Liu Kyok, Dr. Sheikh Muhammad Mukhtar, Dr. S.K. Chaudhary, DDRRM, Dr. Khan, and Dr. Sen, and so many. And it is really very important. And just to start on this, I would like to briefly say that the outline of my presentation would be on the climate change and global warming. What are the temperature, rainfall, sea level rise issues which are associated with climate change, how they are going to affect the coastal systems. And I would also like to touch upon the impact on the small island developing states, and what we can do to minimize these impacts, and what could be the steps that we should take so that this fragile ecosystems are maintained. Now, a reference was made to the climate change. Now, if we look at, normally we talk about carbon dioxide concentration and the temperature rise. Now, if you look at the carbon dioxide concentration, the figure for 2020 is somewhere around 4.1424 ppm. Now, initially it was thought that because of the COVID-19 lockdown, the carbon dioxide concentration would probably will not increase as it was happening in the past few decades. But if you look at the data, you see that from the decades right from 1960 onwards, it's not only the concentration which is increasing, but it is the rate which is also increasing. And even between, if you see the difference between 2020 and 2019, it has been maintained. Now, this is a very serious development, because we have been trying to, at the international level, trying to focus on reduction of carbon dioxide concentration. If you look at the data, it says if you have 1 ppm concentration of carbon dioxide increase, you add 7.80 gigatons of carbon dioxide, or which means 2.12 gigatons of carbon. So, which means that if you want to maintain it, you have to sequester so much carbon every year. Now, if you look at the temperature, the 2019 was the second hottest year. And I think our Honorable DG mentioned about the change in degree from the pre-industrial area. The estimates are that in 2019 it was 1.15. 2020 is expected to be the third hottest year. And since 2015, all those years have been the warmest years on record. There are predictions that if things go on as usual, the 1.5 degree rise may happen much before what the planners desire. Some estimates could say that it could be 1.5 degrees by 2024. The estimates are that 2020 is about 1.2 degrees centigrade. So this is the scenario in which we have to look at the natural ecosystems. Now, if you look at India, we have been trying very hard to reduce the carbon dioxide emissions. But if you look at the data for 2017, in terms of quantity, we are the third largest carbon emitter. Of course, because of our population, when we reduce it, bring it down to per capita, then of course it is quite low compared to all other countries. But that's only some consolation we have. If we look at what India has done as far as tackling climate change is there, the German Watch, a new climate institute network in 2020 has reported that in 2019, India was at 21 positions compared to 13 in 2018. So we have in fact gone a bit lower down. Now, generally when we talk of climate, we talk of two things very specifically. One is of course the temperature and the other is the rainfall. Though we have a global average annual rainfall which is higher than the global average, but the variability is very large, whether you look at the minimum or maximum or the average. And the maximum amount that we all know that we have 11,000 millimeters in Mausanram, and we have Rajasthan areas where it is 100 millimeters. There is huge variation, and what has happened is that probably 80% of our rain falls in 100 hours during the year. And climate change is going to affect the amount, distribution, and intensity. For Indian subcontinent, they say that probably the annual rainfall, as far as the quantum is concerned, would probably remain the same or may increase. And that's for the country as a whole. But we will have less rainy days, more intense rainfalls, and that is going to create drought spells, larger drought spells, and also runoff and erosion, soil erosion. So these are things which we have to tackle. Now, this is just a historical data which shows that in the last 50 years, the frequency of light to moderate rainfall events has decreased, while that of heavy and very heavy rainfall has increased. And so this again is a sort of an indication that we have to focus on rainwater management to quite some extent. We generally look at the rainfall departure on the annual basis, as you can see on the left-hand side. I have just picked up the 4 years just to show the variability that happens in case of rainfall. 14-15 were 2 drought years, 16-17 had slightly less but normal years. But if you look at some of the states where the distribution is there, I have displayed for 2014, 15, 16, 17, and you can just see the difference. If you look at Andhra Pradesh, look at Karnataka, look at Uttar Pradesh, and the variability that happens for the annual rainfall, that is departure from the normal. Now, if you go to the month-wise distribution of some of these states, you can see even a much larger variation. And particularly if you look at the month of June and July, which are very critical for our kharif. So this just indicates that the variability of rainfall is critical and far more important than the average rainfall, which we talk about in general terms. And normally when we talk, we just give a passing reference to sea level rise. This is a record since 1880, and the figures are in inches. You can see that basically the current level is around 9.2 inches, which is compared to 1880. And in the recent years, this has been increasing. And there are measurements which I'll be showing subsequently, which indicates, yes, it is something which we have to take very seriously, because when you talk of coastal areas or the small island developing states, in addition to the temperature and rainfall, it is the sea level rise which has far greater implications than the other components. And what the record shows that in the last 150 years, the sea level rise has been consistently increasing. And I think some figures were given by our chief guest, Dr. Mahapatra also. So it is now, and we expect the figures are anywhere from 40 centimeters to 75 centimeters, even up to 1 meter by the end of the century. So it's already more than 25 plus, or about 27 centimeters by at the present level. Now, if we just to summarize what has happened in the last 5 years, I can say that they have been, as I mentioned, the warmest years, and 0.24 degrees warmer than the previous 5 years. So that is an indication that how fast we are moving towards the 1.5 degrees centigrade. And we have been observing that new records have been created, and you can see the fires which are happening in Australia, Africa, most of Europe, Middle East, North Asia, South America, and parts of the United States. In fact, it is estimated that the sea levels rose by 3.2 millimeters per year on an average over the past 27 years. And this growth is accelerating, which is more worrisome, because the sea level rose 4.8 millimeters annually over the past 5 years, compared to 4.1 millimeters annually for the 5 years before that. And if you look at the records, the past 5 years have also been many extreme events. And these include the record-breaking heat waves in Europe, Cyclone Idai in Mozambique, major bushfires in Australia and elsewhere, prolonged drought in Southern Africa, and 3 North Atlantic hurricanes in 2017. So these are all indications that in addition to just the temperature and rainfall, a lot of impact is there on other parameters also. Now these are the projected estimates for the sea level rise. Currently now we are looking at, earlier it was the SRES, or what was called as the Spatial Reported Emission Scenarios. Now in the recent report of the IPCC, they use the representative concentration pathways, and 2.6, 4.5, or 8.5 are 3 of the scenarios which are being generally talked about. 2.6 is mentioned is one where probably the low emissions are there, and if we follow this sort of management, maybe we can confine to around 2 degrees centigrade by the end of the century. Otherwise, by 4.5 and 8.5 is a scenario where you're not bothered about taking any much action on this. So this shows the sort of mean sea level, which can be around from 0.2 to 0.6, depending upon where we are, for 2.6. In 4.5, it can be anywhere from 0.4 or 40 centimeters to maybe about 60, 70 centimeters, 65 centimeters. And of course, the worst scenario means it could go up to 1 meter by the end of the century. General estimation is, on an average, it could be around 75 centimeters by 2100. And these are again sea levels, and probably the intermediate high or the intermediate low. It is between these two that we may be able to manage if we follow all the protocols that have been finalized for trying to take care of the climate change. Now, sea level rise is caused not only by the temperature, that is thermal expansion of water. It is, we all know that melting of glaciers, ice sheets melting, and now recently it has been observed that land water storage changes are also contributing to sea level rise. And one of the latest development is that there is another factor called marine ice cliff instability. That means a whole strip of a glacier just gets separated from the main glacier, and collapses. And this is also supposed to be contributing quite significantly to SLR. Now, this is just to show you in a graph that at the top level, you have this combined effect. You have global sea level from satellite. Then you have these measurements done. So this is just because of the thermal expansion, and then this is water mostly added to the melt water that is from the ice sheets and the glaciers. So you can see that the slope of this added water through melt water is also increasing probably more than the thermal expansion. Now, this tries to quantify that what could be the contribution of these different components, in the sense that you have thermal expansion, then you have glaciers, glacier melt, then Greenland ice including, and then Antarctic ice sheet, land water storage. As I said, this is now becoming more and more with as time passes, and these histograms indicate that this is the one which is now becoming more important, and it is across all scenarios, whether it was SRES, that is A1B, and all the RCPs which are being talked about lately. So you can see that there could be up to 80 centimeters rise anywhere starting from about 40 centimeters or so to in the different. Only in case of if you are able to control the emissions at the RCP 2.6, as I said, which means that if you stop, there is no more addition of greenhouse gases. Everything is what is as it was today. Then probably RCP 2.6 is possible, which we know is not going to happen. Now, very recently, there was a global climate risk index reported, and India was listed as the 7th most adversely impacted national globally in 2019. But it was very surprising that this global climate risk index did not consider sea level rise. So without considering sea level rise, it is considered that India is the 7th most. The reason they stated in whoever developed the index is that sea level rise is slowly occurring phenomenon. But we all know that its impact on the coastal ecosystems will be huge, as the world over the coastal regions are more densely populated than the mainlands. It has been highlighted by many speakers in the inaugural session. And according to United Nations Environment Programme, India is one of the 21 countries that will suffer most due to sea level rise. And why the number of 27 countries large? Because there are many island countries which are included in this list. And so to be one of the 27 countries means that there is going to be very serious impact on the coastal zones and the island ecosystems. And I'll be trying to look at some of these things. Now, this is just an estimate that if all these parameters which cause rise of sea level, starting from the Antarctica ice sheet, Greenland ice sheet, you can see the potential sea level rise. That means this, of course, indicates in case the entire ice sheet melts, how much rise can be there. So these are just relative estimates. We hope that nothing like this happens, because otherwise we can, if we really do not control the temperature rise, the sea level rise is going to have far more implications than what we see today. Now, why is sea level rise so important? As one thing which was repeatedly mentioned was that they have very high population densities, particularly in the delta regions, and it has been estimated that almost 150 million people live within 1 meter of high tide level, and about 250 million within 5 meters of high tide. And I think it was also mentioned by Chief Guest Dr. Mahapatra that there are billions of dollars invested in the coastal infrastructure immediately adjacent to the coast. So once sea level rise occurs, these infrastructure is going to be affected, because we all know that there will be inundation of low-lying coastal regions, and particularly when you have cyclones or any extreme sea level events, and saltwater intrusion into aquifers, delta estuaries. These are going to have a very severe impact on the coastal ecosystems, water resources, and the human settlements, and all the activities related to that. So we have to probably take very special care of attending to these ecosystems because of heavily populated, they are heavily populated. There are very small islands. There are especially atolls, islands formed of coral and sandy coast, backed by major coastal developments. And these can be, they can even, some of them may even disappear. Now, these are the projections of the temperature by these four scenarios I mentioned earlier. So 2.6, as I mentioned, is one where you are able to stop all, I mean, you maintain the same level of emissions. So maybe by the end of the century, you can confine to somewhere around 1 or 1.5. But in 4.5 and 6, you're like, which are the most likely scenarios? Temperature would definitely be between 2 to 3 degrees centigrade by 2100. Of course, RCP 8.5 is an extreme situation where we are not bothered about climate change. If you look at the mean sea level rise, now you can see the projections. They can be anywhere up to 0.63 meters, that means about 60 plus centimeters. And as I said, about 4.5 and RCP 6, and I think Dr. Mahapat also mentioned, so about 50 centimeters is what is expected if we are able to reduce our emissions as has been decided in the Paris Agreement. These are the different predictions for the temperature and precipitation for the oceans, because when the sea level rise has a direct link on what is happening in the oceans, and you can see that if there is only greenhouse gas emission, there is certain pressure. And if you add the aerosol component, when we talk of aerosols, normally aerosols reduce the temperature. That is the impact. So you can find that if we add the aerosol factor, there could be some relief in terms of temperature changes and in terms of the changes in the annual mean precipitation range. One of the aerosols we can always refer to is the atmospheric brown cloud and volcanic eruptions, which we all know that they are thought to have a cooling effect, though their negative effects are of course of much higher magnitude. Now, this is what has been measured, and in this, if you see that the 2.83 was the estimated contributions of four different components, that is Greenland ice sheet, Antarctic ice sheet, glaciers and ice caps, and the ocean thermal expansion. This has not included the land water storage, but the actual sea level rise is 3.1. So it means almost 0.3 millimeters per year, higher than what was estimated. So which means that we are going to have the sea level rise is probably higher than what has been estimated so far. And this is again the different report which they have written. And I think these are, I have already repeated, so I will not spend much time on this. Basically, as I said, for different scenarios from about 45 centimeters to almost 1 meter is the expected sea level rise by the end of the century. Now coming to what is going to happen to these areas. Now, there was an estimate done in 2000 for these countries, some of these countries, China, Bangladesh, India, Vietnam, and Indonesia. But the new projections which came out in October 2019 have indicated that the numbers is far higher than what was estimated about 20 years back. For India in particular, earlier estimate was that probably only 5 million of the population would be affected, but now it appears that 36 million Indians would be affected by sea level rise, by and even our neighbor like Bangladesh, 42 million. We all know that Bangladesh is at a lower elevation, so there'll be almost also 42 million citizens affected by that and other countries. So a very, very high percentage of population is going to be affected by sea level rise in all the countries. If you look at the Indian scenario, as some of these figures were mentioned in the inaugural session, there are about 171 million people living in coastal districts. We have one of the very long coastlines, more than 7,500, and I have listed the coastal districts. We also have island territories, Andaman and Nicobar and Lakshadweep Islands. And about 14.5 are dependent on the fishing and related activities. It is expected that by 2100, the population which will be affected will be around 200 million. The other worrisome part is that India's east coast is more prone to cyclones. The data shows that between 1891 to 2018, Bay of Bengal had 520 cyclones compared to Arabian Sea, which had only 126. Now, this is just to give a detail. I will not go through these, but this gives a detail of what are the coast length of different states around the coastline, plus the number of islands in Lakshadweep and Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So you can see that there are 37 islands in Lakshadweep and 348 islands which constitute Andaman and Nicobar Islands. And one of the very important aspects is the wetlands management. If you are able to preserve your wetlands, you can take care of some of the negative impacts of sea level rise. And this shows that what are the wetland areas in these states when you take the coastal length and the width of those coastal zones. So we have a very significant area under a wetland in these coastal areas also, which have to be managed. And of course, there have been many estimates for the global sea rise, and this is a sort of variation that you can see, anywhere from 11, 12 to 30 centimeters per century is the estimates given. And in this particular slide, we also mentioned the hotspots, which regions would be affected mostly, more seriously compared to the other parts of the state. And you can see that there will be 4 such spots in West Bengal, Kolkata, Diamond Harbour, Haldi, and Sagar, where in case of Sagar, it will be, of course, a decline in the sea level, and in Calcutta and Diamond Harbour, there will be very significant increase in the, and so these cities are going to be affected very seriously. So would be Mumbai, in Kandla, in Gujarat, Visakhapatnam. So these are already states where this is going to be affected. And of course, there are a few bright spots like Mangalore, where initially they expected it will be there was some decline, but now again there is an increase in the sea level rise. And if we look at if we continue as it is, without taking any strategic or management options, you can see that states like Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Pondicherry, West Bengal, a very, very sizable loss would be happening in the wetland area, and also the rise in sea levels. So I think one has to start developing plans to take care of this, and I'll be mentioning what could be done later on. Now, and this is just an idea about what could be the loss in coastal wetland in different scenarios, that is 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. If the sea level rises of that magnitude, you can again see that these states like Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Puducherry, West Bengal are areas, even states like Andhra Pradesh and Odisha would be very seriously affected by the sea level rise. Now, it has also been monitored that the sea level rise would vary along the coast, and you can see the figures of the annual average sea level rise. In Kandla, it is 1.91 per year in terms of millimeters, and then you can go to Diamond Harbour, which you can see it's very, very high, 4.06. Chennai is 0.52. So this is the sort of variation, and we have to probably keep this variation in mind when we develop whatever strategies we have or management options to take care of the sea level rise. Now, this is just to give you some pictorial photographs and very quickly go through. This is a scenario where system is not affected by climate change. Everything is in a very good equilibrium. But what happens when the system is pressurized primarily by climate change? Then what happens? We have algal blooms. The swarming promotes algal blooms, There is seaward loss and landward movement of coastal wetland as a result of sea level rise. Mangroves are replaced by salt marsh grasses as a result of climate warming. And Dr. Mahapatra mentioned about mangroves in particular. This warming-driven replacement of temperature seagrass is temperate seagrass by subtropical seagrass and loss of biology due to ocean acidification. Again, something we happens so gradually. Then there is invasion of tropical fishes into temperate coastal waters and changes in fish species, abundance and composition warming. Then, of course, saltwater intrusion due to sea level rise. And then on this, if we also put on the local human impacts, then all these things are, in fact, intensified and because along with the temperature rise, we have the urban industrial and agriculture expansion, and this again puts more pressure. And particularly because we all know that it is the groundwater which is being used mostly in all the coastal areas for drinking water and for other household needs, and that withdrawal also sort of creates pressure for the saltwater due to sea level rise. And then, of course, coral reefs were mentioned by Honorable DG, and again, you can see what happens is that you have healthy state, climate change, and local human stresses and degraded state. So these are the basically changes which occur as we move as the situation versus. And one of the things is that there's a collapse of fisheries due to these synergistic interactions between overfishing and warming. Means the overall impact is much higher. And of course, wherever you have intrusion of salt water, aquaculture could also be affected very seriously by sea level rise. And this is just giving you what happens in the various ecosystems, warming and eutrophication of on coral reefs, right from healthy states to degraded states, warming and overfishing in kelp forests, that is category B. And then in C is the ocean acidification, hypoxia on hard clams and soft sediments. And then you have warming and heavy metal pollution on oyster reefs. And then, of course, drought and overfishing in salt marshes. So this is how the climate change and the human stresses or the human anthropogenic activities, as you call it, they lead to these things. Now, this is just a conceptual model of and how a climate change and a human population density is related. And you can see that these are the extreme points and the high, and you have a low point where the local impact is there. But then you have a state where the impact between the climate and this is high, and then there's a synergic effect. That means both the climate and the human density or human activities add together to increase. This is sort of multiplicative. Then we have just additive, and if it is negative, then of course, for example, if human interventions involve making attempts to reduce the greenhouse gases, prevention of mangroves, then this could be also antagonistic, and you have the impact is reduced, while all other cases the impact of that is increased. And this is what happens to the ecosystem, and particularly species cover when the population density increases, especially loss to local impact, loss to climate change, and this remains. So this is a combination of what happens when you have all these things together. Now, if we look at the ecosystems, we can define several ecosystems which come under coastal and small island ecosystem. One is, of course, the salt marshes, and then we have climate stressors, which are sea level rise, warming, carbon dioxide, etc. Then we have the local human stresses. Pollutant input, I think Dr. Mahapatra mentioned very specifically about the nitrate, in particular nitrogen, biological invasion, coastal development, engineering, nutrient input, sediment input. So all these things worsen the impact on salt marshes. Mangroves was referred to, and you can see that because of the activities along the coast, this is affected, and again, this also reduces the resilience to climate change. You have seagrass beds which are affected by the nutrient input and other activities. And the salt sediments that are there again are all affected. So in fact, all these factors which are there, a combination of climate and human interventions are going to destroy all these ecosystems. It could be rocky shores or kelp forest. Rocky shores and kelp forest, of course, the fishing activity also adds to the negative impacts on these things. But essentially, when we talk of the coral reefs and oyster reefs, you can see that most of the factors responsible for all these ecosystems are same. So basically, one has to take care of these factors like fishing, coastal development, sediment input, neat input, all these infrastructures which destroy the system. So one has to probably look at how these can be, the effect can be minimized. Now, one of the local conservation activities are the marine protected areas, which have been, and these are some examples that if you could have identify marine protected areas, what you call as MPAs, there is stability in coral reef and fish species richness. And this study done in Australia, and you can see that the blue line, which indicates the area which is marine protected area, you can find both the, and this shows the community thermal affinity, and so the MPAs provide a resistance to the tropicalization, which means the impact of temperature increase per decade on the species. Now, this particular slide shows on the impact of the pollutants. We have taken nitrogen because nitrogen is one fertilizer which is being used in the largest quantity, and then of course it has been linked with the submerged aquatic vegetation. This is the result from USA, and you can see that if the SAV cover increases, the impact of these things is also reduced. And they also looked at the interaction between several factors, and you can see that this is the baseline. This is because of the additive mortality rate, and this is because of the synergy. And then, of course, if no antagonism is there. So they have tried to also quantify the mortality rate by the, as I mentioned about the climate change and the human population. These are the interactions which have taken place. Also the genotypes which are there. There are genotypes which can survive. So if you have those genotypes, then the effect is also modified. You can see the effect of different genotypes and how they behave over the period. And then, of course, we all know that biodiversity always promotes restoration stress, and this shows in quantitative terms that if you are able to, if there is species richness, and the recorded impact on seagrass is reduced. Now, what are the impact of climate change on the economic sectors? This is very important because coastal development areas are there. Then we have these small island developing states. They have a very narrow resource base to drive their industrial development. And for them, the few key industries are fisheries, tourism, and agriculture, and which affect the national GDP. So some quantitative values people have worked out, so I will just mention some of them. And this is an idea of some of the islands, small islands which are there. And you can see that percentage of land area within 5 meters of sea level in Maldives, Marshall Islands, Kiribati, Cook Islands is almost 90 to 100%. So if there's 5 meters sea level rise, of course, we don't expect that much by 2100. But if because of some waves or tsunami it happens, you can see the impact of what's going to happen. And what is the percentage of population? It always matches the LA area. You can see the same thing happening here, that you have a huge population which is affected in the islands like Maldives, Marshall Islands, Kiribati, and Suriname compared to the other ones. Now, if you look at the economic losses and cost of inaction, which means that if you do not take any action to take care of the impact of sea level rise, you can see the percentage of GDP which would be affected by sea level rise in these islands. And you can see that If you look at the world average, which is about here, maybe about 0.4, 0.5%, here you can see that the impact will rise more than 100% in some of these countries. So the average annual loss, which is the percentage, much higher compared to the global average, which indicates that these small islands are more susceptible, more fragile for the impact of climate change. And that was for the Pacific region. If you look at the Caribbean, you can see that again, if no action is taken, the percentage of GDP, which could be around 5% in 2025, would go to more than 20% by 2100. So I think these just highlight what is going to happen to these small islands. Dr. Luke mentioned about these funding available by internet. So there are a lot of agencies which are contributing. There are 16 such dedicated climate funds which are active in this, and a lot of almost 800 million was approved for 170 projects. So we hope that because of these measures, maybe corrective measures are taken and the impact of climate change is minimized. And then when we talk of infrastructure, the asset replacement cost, which could arise out of inaction, again, would be very, very high. And in terms of food, it comes to almost, you can see, up to 15%, from 5% to 15%. And they could again be impacting the GDP negatively to quite say. But something which is very important is many of these small island developing states are in fact large ocean states. When we say large ocean states, means that these ocean spaces comprise a significant portion of the world's ocean, on an average 28 times more than the actual land space. And just an example was the Republic of Kiribati, again one of these small islands that are there. It has the 13th largest exclusive economic zone on Earth. And if you look at the share of fish export as percentage of GDP, you can see that in Marshall Islands, it's all more than 60%. In Kiribati, it's about almost 57%, 58%, and likewise. So the fisheries becomes a very important component of this, how to tackle that. And it was mentioned what happens when global warming occurs. You can see that this portion shows about the subtropical and temperate oceans, and the tropics. You can see here that the temperate cool water fishes are gradually replaced by the subtropical and the tropical warm fish. This is in case of subtropical temperate regions, but in tropics, what happens is that the fish species as such disappear. A combination of subtropical and tropical fish gradually are replaced, and only warm water fishes are left ultimately, and the total harvest is also reduced. As for these islands, tourism is very, very important as an industry, which is important for their GDP. And you can see that in the Caribbean region, that if nothing is taken care of, the projected loss from tourism could go as high as $2,500 million by 2100. So again, this industry is going to be very seriously affected if the sea level rise is allowed to continue as such. Now, there's also not only the effect on that, but if there is sea level rise, there is loss of land. Along with this loss of land is livelihood and this habitat security. And then people migrate. So there are two types of migration, which is one is forced migration, when these impacts are very severe. So you have a relocation at the community level, and these are some of the sites which are mentioned which will be affected. In case livelihood is affected because of salinization of water, pollution, crop failure, persistent drought, water, and all these things. And then the habitat security, where you have diseases, vectors, malaria, dengue, and all these things, which happen when you get the area gets inundated. Then, of course, you have induced voluntary migration when the impact is not very serious. So people move in such of better operations. But in all cases, a population which could be a very sizable number moves out from the coastal zones, and then it has a lot of impact on the economy of the particular coastal district or the coastal state, and overall at the country level. So what are the key points which I would like to just mention is that, of course, the climate change we all know is there, and it is affecting the growth of the small islands. And some of these small island urban states would disappear because of the impact of sea level change. So there has to be both mitigation and adaptation. And it is very clearly brought out that the economic cost of adaptation is high, but in the small island urban states, relative to the size of the economies, therefore they need to have a lot of support internationally by shifting to low carbon economy, and of course whatever the technologies are developed to take care of the adaptation, mitigation, and development approaches. This is just to show you what has happened in Australia, because Australia was mentioned by our chief guest also, that in the second half of the 20th century, the average recurrence level for sea level height of a given value is less than half the value of the first half, which means it has doubled in the second half. That is shown here before 1950 and after 1950. So this again indicates that these can also cause a serious damage to the natural ecosystems, to the infrastructure, and of course all the activities, agricultural related activities happening. This is just to sort of highlight what we have been mentioning so far. We have to maintain and restore native coastal vegetation to ensure shoreline integrity so that the impact is reduced. One has to identify the vulnerable sectors, systems, and localities like coastal wetlands, mangroves, biodiversity, and all these things. And then one has to also quantify the impacts from sea level rise in the deltas, in the human settlements activities, and then specifically the adaptive capacity of the small islands and low-lying coast areas. So obviously there is a need for adaptation and mitigation and to take care of all these issues. So again, these are some of the factors which we have been discussing. I have been listing out for the last half an hour or so. And I think we have to see that further encroachment of sea doesn't encroach or is minimized. Now, looking at the water resources of the small islands and low-lying coast areas, I think both the surface water and the groundwater resources are affected, and they impact the hydrologic regime and the saltwater contamination, saltwater intrusion, and which finally have an effect on the human health and well-being, water supply, the drainage, shipping, ecosystems, infrastructure, the economy, which I have listed for some of the ecosystems. So all these happen when the sea level occurs in all the coastal zones and the small islands that we have. This just gives an idea of what could be the effect on the land area, population, and the GDP of some of these continents if there's 1 meter rise in sea level. And you can see that Asia, which is at the bottom, is the one which has, of course, the largest land area, largest population, and its GDP would also be affected by this. So we have to, particularly the Asian countries, have to probably be more proactive in taking some action on this. Of course, we all know that if you want to avoid large increases in sea level, we have to take care of global warming and climate change, and which are, of course, we all agree that there should be significant reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. We have already committed to a Paris Agreement that by 2030, 33 to 35% of the greenhouse gas emission and to reduce. We have to really focus on carbon sequestration. And as you all know that if you really want to reduce the intensity, you need about 2.5 to 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent sequestered in the country. Of course, we all know that deforestation is one of the main reasons, and it is very important that we restore peatland and wetland areas because they are huge sinks of carbon in the country. And some of the lessons from the Pacific Islands which are there, which are important to show, for both social and ecological resilience. They said that you must revitalize traditional wells, implement climate smart agriculture, and climate smart agriculture means you have to look at the aquaculture also, the livestock, the crops, everything. You have to very strictly identify and protect areas, implement the climate smart development plans. And then, of course, there are many challenges, sometimes remoteness of islands, lack of technical financial capacity, governance, and then also measuring impacts is sometimes very, very difficult. So we have to take care of this. The other important thing is how do you scale up the ecosystem-based adaptation through national policies and innovative financing. Again, the very important aspect, and then the cooperation approaches for adaptation. Now, one example was mentioned about Sundarbans. They are the largest continuous mangrove ecosystem in the world, which are spread over almost 9,630 square kilometers. As I was mentioned, the climate change is expected to result in shrinkage of wetland areas, and the decaying organic matter will now become a source of carbon. And satellite imagery has shown that the 1 meter sea level rise will inundate about 1,000 square kilometer in that region. And 4 islands in that region have already disappeared in the last 2 decades. Very obviously, we have to search for nature-based solutions. There are, of course, so many solutions available. Coastal flooding and shoreline disintegration can be reduced by mangroves and coral reefs, I think, so, which was highlighted. And a study across 52 sites found that natural habitats were 2 to 5 times more effective than the engineering structures. And that is why probably we talk a lot about nature-based solutions. These are the systems and what can be done. We have 3 major options to take care of the climate and non-climate impacts. There are strategies which deal with protection, which is key. For example, you can always have a physical structure like a dike or surge barrier. You can have buildings which are flood tolerant, flood-wise buildings, and you can also have land use planning so that you accommodate partly the increase and also retreat to some area to some extent, so that you can take care of this. And this will be whether inundation, flood, and storm damage, wetland loss and change, erosion, saltwater intrusion, and rising water tables. So you have different options which are available, and I have indicated on the in the column on the extreme right, and which includes, as I mentioned, about dikes, land use planning, managed realignment of hard defenses, sediment management, coastal defenses, and then, of course, building saltwater intrusion barriers. You have to focus on water abstraction. As I said, most of the coastal areas, drinking water and other domestic water use is through the groundwater. And can we think of fresh water injection or change the pattern, upgrade the drainage system so that the pollution by pollutants is avoided? We have polder systems which are below the sea level, how we can take care of them. And of course, so these are the options which are available depending upon what is which is the factor which is dominantly affecting the climate or the anthropogenic activities. With these words, I would like to stop and once again thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts on coastal and small island developing states. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for delivering wonderful lectures. Just before inviting chairman his comments, I'd like to inform to all the delegates that we have started the other concurrent session on different theme. We have already started as per time schedule. So kindly join after this, immediately after this program. We have already started due to keeping in mind the time schedule of the program. Now I request chairman for his remarks.
Chairman has unmuted his mic.
He's, I think now he's unmuted. Dr. Kadrikar, sir, we can't hear you.
Now I can hear you.
Yeah, now we can hear it.
Yeah. The whole presentation by Dr. Singh, and I'm very glad that he is available for this important seminar. And I'm very happy that after many years I could see him, and in a very important point, he gave a very important information about the water level, because the coastal system is all vulnerable, and we have to take care. And I feel that
Please go ahead.
we can be the seawater rise and how we are going to affect it. I thank Singh for giving this wonderful presentation, and I'm again happy, and I was very happy to change this session with the when Dr. Sen
You have you finished, Dr. Kadrikar sir?
Yeah.
Now, on behalf of the organizers, it's a pleasant duty to propose a vote of thanks to Dr. A.K. Singh, Dr. Kadrikar, for letting us listen to a very wonderful and exhaustive lecture. And as I know, Dr. Singh is always very rich in slide preparation, and he has not left any point untapped for the climate change of the coastal ecosystem. And it has been quite educative. And I request Dr. Singh also to kindly forward to us a full paper so that we can take the opportunity to publish it under Speech and Nature by 20th of April. That is the deadline, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sen.
Thank you, sir. Then we'll close this webinar room 1 session now. Just for the information of the participants or delegates, I'd like to inform you that there in the afternoon in Indian time, there will be 2 plenum lectures. One will be delivered by Professor T.J. Flowers he's a professor, School of Life Science, University of Sussex. He will be talking on the very interesting topic, how can eHalov, a database of salt-tolerant plants, help you research? That is in the same webinar room from 16 to 17 hours in Indian time. And another plenum lecture will be delivered by Dr. Michael Phillips, the Director, Aquaculture and Fisheries Science, World Fish Center. His topic is on the future of fish agri-food systems. That will be just after the plenum lecture of T.J. Flowers, that is from 17 hours to 17:30 IST time. Okay. And the link, whatever you have shared with you, please use that link to enter that particular session. And as I informed already, that our technical sessions, concurrent session already started on different session and under different themes. So you all requested to join that program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.